From haunted houses to cursed artifacts, from whispers in the dark to battles you'll never read in scripture. This is the Unholy Podcast, hosted by Doug Owen, author, investigator, and survivor of one of the most harrowing real-life hauntings ever documented. Each week, Doug pulls back the veil between this world and the next, sharing stories that aren't fiction, because he lived them. Prepare yourself. The silence is over.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Unholy Podcast. I'm your host, Doug Owen, author and paranormal investigator, founder of Authentic Haunted Paranormal. Tonight's guest is someone many of you may already know, especially if you follow paranormal research, theory, and investigative discussions. He's a paranormal researcher, an author, and the creator of resonance energy theory. He's host of the Paranormal Addicts podcast, and tonight we're going to explore not only his experiences in the paranormal field, but also his ideas about what may actually be behind the phenomena so many people struggle to explain. Please welcome Kent Wilson.
I'm excited to be here. Thanks.
Absolutely. So I always like to kind of start simple for listeners. So for those meeting you for the first time, who is Kent Wilson?
I guess my journey in the paranormal, that's who I am. I've been doing, I was one of the lucky ones that was, I didn't really consider myself lucky then, but, now I look at it as being lucky. I'm one of the lucky ones that was born with abilities, I don't remember a time in my life that I don't remember seeing an apparition or having dreams that tell me what's going to happen, So that's where everything started. And then, the other side of me, I'm a family guy. I got a wife, 20 years, 3 kids. I'm an Army veteran, So I'm basically just, your next door neighbor, I guess.
Terrific. So tell us, what first drew you into the paranormal?
Well, like I said, the first experience I ever remember having is when I was 5 years old. I remember seeing an apparition. It didn't look like an apparition to me at that time. It looked like a stranger walking through my house, and so at that point I didn't know if I should be afraid or curious. I was only 5 years old, and I grew up and still live in not only the Bible Belt, but the heart of the Bible Belt. So it ain't like I could go to in the door to be like, can you help me with what I'm experiencing? So for years, I kind of just put it off to the side. And then when I was 12, I had a elderly family member pass away, and she came to me in a dream to tell me she had passed away before anybody else knew that. And she told me she had passed away, but not to be sad, that she was going to a better place. But she wanted to stop and tell me that I needed to learn how to use my abilities and not be afraid of them or ashamed of them. So at that point, the only thing I had in those days, we didn't have ghost hunters, ghost adventurers, ghost brothers, ghost dogs, ghost whatever. The only thing we had was one Friday a month, Robert Stack would do the unexplained or unsolved mysteries. We had that. And then other than that, we had the library. So at 12 years old, I engrossed myself at the McCracken County Library and at the Heath Middle School Library, seeking out everything I could on paranormal, ghosts, hauntings, everything I could find. Of course, a lot of that was, either Lorraine Lauren, but I read everything I could. I absorbed everything I could, to the point that I actually got called down to the principal's office, and my principal was like, "Kent, should we be worried about you checking out these books?" I'm like, "No." So that's what got me into it. And then the more I grew into the more I grew with the field and the more curious I got, I decided to become an educated investigator too. I used my GI Bill and got me a degree in parapsychology from West Georgia University, and I got a degree in theology, and then I studied demonology under Bishop James Long. So because I figured if I'm going to do this, I want to know as much as I can.
Oh, absolutely. So that's the point where curiosity turned into active investigation. So let me ask you, what made you decide that this was something seriously worth pursuing? I mean, it sounds like you've put a lot of effort and you've put a lot of education and a lot of resources into this. So what was it that made you decide it was going to be a lucrative or worthwhile pursuit?
Well, the thing that really kind of lit my fire and made me decide that I wanted to pursue it was I was told by this strain. I was at St. Francis Hospital in Cape Girardeau, Missouri. My Memoir, as I called her, had just had a stroke. So we had finally, it had been a couple weeks, so my grandpa finally decided that me and my brother could come and visit. So we're in the waiting room. I'm trying to get a Pepsi free. So that shows you how long ago this was. I'm trying to get me a Pepsi free. That's the only Pepsi product I ever liked. I was trying to get me a Pepsi free. And this strange lady, she looked like Neil Carter from Give Me a Break. You know what I'm saying? That's who she looked like. And she just came up to me and she looked me in my face and told me I was a tool of the devil and I was going to hell because of my abilities.
Wow.
And so you don't tell that to a 12-year-old kid. And so that's what kind of lit the fire for me to research, all that stuff. But why I decided it was worthwhile is me and my team, we still do residential cases. I know a lot of teams have gone away from doing that, but we still do residential cases because to me, that's why I do this, is to help the families and to, try to help explain what's going on. I mean, we're not going to have the answers until we're on that side, but I like to try to find out before I get on that side.
No, absolutely. So you're known not only as an investigator, but someone who is developing ideas around paranormal theory. So tell us about resonance energy theory. What is it?
All right, so it's actually been on my mind for a couple years. So what plugged it into my mind was, we have some investigators who love going to cemeteries. Okay. Mm-hmm. Personally, I'm not a big cemetery person, but I got people on my team that they love cemeteries, and I don't like cemeteries that much because logically, there's no reason for a spirit to be there. Nobody lived there. Nobody died there. So there's no reason. So if the spirit comes back, there's no reason for him to be there. But there's been reported cases where there's been interaction, an actual intelligent interaction, haunting. So that got me thinking, why does that happen? And then I went a little bit deeper, and then I went to places like Bobby Mackey's Music World here in Kentucky. Some people, of course, say it has a portal to hell and all that stuff, but there's no history to back up why it would have that. And same thing with like a haunted object, whether it's a haunted doll or whatever. Same thing with that. They have no soul, so they're not coming back from the dead. But yet we've witnessed, or we've at least read firsthand accounts of people interacting with all this stuff. So that got my mind thinking, why? I mean, obviously this is a lot more than a residual activity, and this is a lot more than like stone tape theory, because those are both residual. There's no interaction with it. So what I'm talking about is actual interaction. So my theory that says this is the Cliff Note version, but most people agree that spirits and whatever are energy. We're energy. Everything's energy, and you can't get rid of energy. I mean, even Einstein said that energy carries on after we're gone. So So let's start with a doll. Take a doll, for example. A doll is usually a kid's, especially a little girl's, best friend growing up. So that little girl's interacting with this doll, telling this doll her secrets, her crushes, and everything. So that she's transferring energy to this doll. So at what point does that energy become an entity of its own? And once it does become an entity of its own, then you have an intelligent interaction. So that's the Cliff Note version of what resonant energy theory is.
So when you developed this theory, what questions were you trying to answer?
Trying to answer why people have experiences at cemeteries, why people have experiences with haunted objects, and why people have experiences at places that there's no history. And furthermore, why are they having intelligent interactions?
Mm-hmm. So do you see resonance energy theory as like an explanatory model, or more of like a framework for understanding patterns?
It's more of I guess it's probably more of a framework, because, at least at this point, it might develop into more, but at this point, it's still just a framework for explaining it, because I'm just now getting to the point where I'm trying to develop experiments to prove or disprove what I'm saying? So we're still kind of on the baby step version of the theory right now. Right now, I'm breaking it down into like haunted objects as one example, and then like cemeteries as the other example, because the cemeteries are kind of the same but different. But to me, the theory inside the theory is the reason why some people have experiences in cemeteries is because families go there to grieve. They go there to grieve, so all their energy eventually transfers there, and so that energy can become just like with a doll, it becomes an entity of its own, and it can even mimic the person you think it is, because the family is mourning or maybe even celebrating at the cemetery is feeding them that facts. So the energy is absorbing all that energy, all that knowledge. So therefore you're going to have actual intelligent interaction with entity, with a spirit, whatever term you want to use. So yeah. Huh. So that's the theory.
So let me ask you, how has the paranormal community responded to your theory?
I've actually mostly positively.
Okay.
Mostly positively. I've had like Jason McRae, if you know Jason McRae from Canada. He was the first one to post something, and it was positive. And then Steve Asher from down here in Kentucky, he posted positive, and then Sarah from Get Haunted, she posted. She's like, I love anything that makes people ask questions. So I've only really had one negative, and it was more like, I think you're just copying other theories. I'm like, no, I'm not copying other theories. I was like, my theory is going to definitely share DNA with like stone tape theory and other things. But the main difference between resonant energy theory and stone tape theory is stone tape is a residual activity. Resonant energy is a intelligent activity. So I mean that's the main difference. That's the main difference.
I see. Do you think that some people and paranormal investigators may misunderstand what you're trying to say? That they're not really grasping the theory?
Yes, I think that's a very big possibility. I even made a little video to try to explain it, and I'm actually going. Yeah, obviously I'm doing the podcast things now, and I'm actually speaking later this year at a few conferences to try to get people to understand more, and it's not like I'm definitely not claiming that I've answered all of the questions in the paranormal.
Right.
I mean, that's one thing I want to make clear. This is just a piece of the pie. This doesn't explain, like intelligent hauntings. This doesn't explain, non-human. This only explains the entities like it, the entities that there's no reason for them to be there. Because, I mean, I think most of us agree at this point, if a spirit is still here, they choose to be here. I mean, so there's no reason for a spirit to choose to be at a cemetery or for a spirit to choose to be inside a door. So that's where resonant energy theory comes in. It's not trying to explain, it's not trying to explain, your normal intelligent haunting or your residual haunting, because a residual haunting, as and I'm going to say it for the people out there that may not understand, a residual haunting is just like a loop in a videotape. They do the same thing over and over again. They don't know you're there. I call it a glitch of the matrix, is what I call it. But so that's a residual haunting, and that's not what I'm talking about.
Okay, so let's step into the investigative side. Now, what kind of cases stand out most in your experience?
The two cases, as for the case that sticks with me more than anything, is actually a residential case from back 30 years ago, and I can actually talk about it because it's been long enough. I don't usually talk about residential cases because residential cases are about helping the family. It's not about anything else. Right. But this one's been long enough that and the families allowed me to talk about it. It started out. There was at the time that I went on it, I was living outside Louisville on the Indiana side, or as they like to call it, the sunny side of Louisville. Okay. At that time, I was a pro MMA fighter, and my day job was I managed a tumbleweed restaurant. So when I had time, I still did paranormal investigating. When we got a call from the in-laws or the parents, however you want to look at it, of this couple. Well, what happened? This was a big case. It was all over the newspaper, all over the TV. It was a murder-suicide. The husband killed the kids, killed his wife, and then killed himself. Well, the grandparents, whatever you want to call them, they called us and asked us if we would go to the house and give them some answers. So of course we read the police report and all that stuff first, and the police report said that the husband had lost his job at John Deere and had went into depression. It went into alcohol and went into trying to practice occult practices, blah blah blah, and then killed his wife. He killed his kid's wife. So we went up there. The first mistake, I admit when we made mistakes. The mistake we made in this one, the case was still too fresh. It had only been like 3 months since the murder-suicide. So we should have probably waited. But when you have a, well, they're my age now. When you have a 50-year-old couple calling you, crying, and asking you to help them find answers, you go. So when we drive up there, it's interesting because I tell people all the time, when we drive up to the house, it was like a scene from a Stephen King movie. So everybody's heard of the Crying Baby Bridge in Indiana. The one where the mom supposedly threw her baby off the bridge, and you can see her face. Well, we had to go underneath it, and then when we got to the house, catty-cornered, probably 60 feet, was an abandoned 1800 cemetery. And so it was just odd. And then the neighbor had decided to take a bulldozer and try to knock down the house.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was nice. So when we climbed into the attic to get to the first floor, when we got into the house, it was pretty much. I mean, it was still crime tape, still blood. I mean, it was like so. It was pretty much exactly what we expected. So I do still get emotional doing this, telling this story. So excuse me if I get emotional.
No,
so when we walk in, they let me go in first because of my abilities. So I go in first, and I start in the kids' room because that's where I come in first. Well, he killed the kids in their bed, the daughter and the son in their bed while they were sleeping, and so the bloodstained mattress still there. But honestly, the kids' bedroom in the hallway, you wouldn't have guessed anything happened. I mean, it was just airy. But then when you walked into the master bedroom, it was completely different. So he made his wife get on her knees in front of him, depending on which version of the report you believe. Some say that he made her give him oral sex, and some say he just made her get on his knees, and then he shot her in the head. And then he went and sat on the bed and shot himself. So I kept getting drawn to the dresser beside the bed. There was nothing. I mean, it was just a dresser. But finally, we decided to move the dresser, and we usually don't move furniture in somebody else's house, when we're doing an inspection. But this was an exception because something kept drawing me to this dresser. So when we moved it, we found he had cut a piece of the paneling in like a 2x2 square and made it into like a door. And when you went in there, it was his journal. I guess you call a guy's journal. If it's a girl, it was just a diary. Right. So we found his journal, and in his journal, he actually talked about all the things he attempted to try. He talked about how he thought about killing his wife and how he thought about killing his kids, and he planned on killing his in-laws and all this stuff. I mean, it was graphically written in his journal. And then I kept getting drawn into the closet. It was a big walk-in closet, and then when we went into the closet, we found other weapons of. He looked like he was just stockpiling guns and stuff. So yeah, that one stuck with me. But the positive was what the family wanted. They wanted to know that their daughter and their grandkids had moved on, and I was able to let them know that. But yeah, it's a case that definitely stuck with me.
That's harrowing, and that is so sad. So let's ask this question. Do private homes affect you differently than, say, public haunted locations?
Most time, yes.
Okay.
Yes. So I can pretty well go anywhere at this point, as far as, the big places. And, it don't affect me like you would expect it to. Like, for example, I've been to Waverly Hills Sanitarium 8 times, you know what I'm saying? And it's always a good investigation, but it don't freak me out like it does other people. But most of the time when I go to a residential house, there's just something there, especially if there's a kid involved. If there's a kid involved, it becomes a priority case, And, the last one that we did was like down in Tennessee, and it ended up being, we had to uncover like layers and layers, and it ended up being, they kept trying to say it was a demonic spirit, and maybe it was. I won't call it demonic, I'll call it a malicious spirit. And for the people out there that don't understand what a malicious spirit is, if you're a dickhead when you're alive, you're going to be a dickhead when you're dead. Right. That's a malicious spirit. Right. So we ended up being able to find the actual history of the spirit, and he ended up being a preacher, back in the 1910s, the early 1900s, mm-hmm. And he ended up being one that molested children.
Oh wow!
And raped children, and the house was built on what used to be his church, and when they moved in, they had a daughter that was in the age he liked. So he like attached to her, and he even started following her to school and stuff. He ended up driving her like crazy until we got there and was able to help her, and we were able to. It's funny. It's funny looking back at it now. It wasn't funny then. So most of the time people assume that when you go to a house, when you confront a spirit or you talk to a spirit, it's usually in the basement or whatever. But the pastor made me climb into the attic. And it wasn't a finished attic either. It was like a half-finished attic, and I'm a big guy, so me and my friend Ken, we were both army crawling inside this attic because that's where the preacher wanted us to have our confrontation. Mm-hmm. So he also chose to use the old flashlight technique. I have all the fancy stuff. And that's what I tell people. I'm like, the spirits are going to choose what they want to use, and he chose to use the flashlight spirit. So, but I was able to, thanks to my training, I was able to make the house safe for the family and the daughter, and we do check back in with her periodically to make sure everything's still okay and they don't need us, and so.
Wow, that's interesting. When a new case comes in, what is the first thing that you do? The very first thing when you get a case?
Okay, so we actually have an actual procedure. So the first thing we do is we do a phone interview. I do the phone interview myself, and then when we do the phone interview, we actually have a sheet with the questions that we ask. So there's no misinterpretation. There's no nothing. That's the questions we ask. And some of the questions may not be comfortable for the client. I don't like that term, but some of the questions may not be comfortable for the client. But the questions that we have to know, like we ask, anybody did drugs? Anybody have mental issue? What's your religious background? We ask all that stuff, because we need to know. And so then after the phone interview. Then if I decide that it's actually something that we may need to look into, then we actually do an actual walkthrough or in-person interview, whatever term you want to use. I use walkthrough. And when we do the walkthrough, there's 5 of us to go. There's 5 of us to go. There's me and one of my team leads, and me and the team lead, we interview everybody, whoever wants to be interviewed, the family, the neighbors, whoever. We interview everybody, and it's the same questions we asked on the phone. We're asking them again, but this time we're videotaping them, we're voice recording them. We're getting it right there. And while we're doing that, that's usually me and Jill. When me and Jill's doing that, the other 3 that's with us, they're doing a walkthrough investigation. They're getting EMF readings. They're getting an SLS reading. They're getting they're getting all the baselines they can get, and that way when we come back, or if we come back, we know that we know that maybe a 20 EMF reading is normal there, and of course if there's a 20 EMF reading that's normal, that also makes you think that's maybe part of why they think there's activity, because high EMF can make you see that. So that's why we do the baseline. And then as we do the walkthrough, then we set the investigation within 10 days. We want to get in there. We want to get in there and help the family as soon as we can.
How much time do you spend doing historical research before you go investigating?
From the time, so I actually have one member of my team, that's her thing. So from the time I do the phone interview, before we even do the in-person interview, she goes ahead and she does all the historical, she can find on it, everything. And she actually works for the PVA office, so she can get deep into it. So.
And how much time do you spend ruling out, say, normal explanations versus the paranormal?
We always, I don't particularly like the word debunk, but we always try to debunk everything first. So, yeah. So, because not everything's paranormal, so honestly, even though obviously I believe in the paranormal, I go into every investigation as a skeptic. I want you to prove to me that it's paranormal, and then so we you have to roll out. Some things are easy, like high EMF. So if it's a high EMF, that's probably why they're having thank their spirits, and high EMF can be caused by bad wiring or anything. I actually saw the house that we was talking about there in Tennessee when we went through the walkthrough. Their Wi-Fi box was giving off an 88 on the millimeter. I'm like, you're going to have to disconnect your Wi-Fi meter while we're investigating. So so we always look for environmental, natural reasons before we look at paranormal. If you try to make everything, look for everything to be environmental or whatever, and you can't, then at the end, then maybe it's paranormal is maybe what you got, but you never look at paranormal as your first answer. I know some investigators, and I'm not going to name names because that's not what I do, but I know some investigators that they'll make their evidence fit their theory. They'll go into an investigation, and in their mind, they'll already be like, oh, it's going to be haunted. They already know going in, and then they make their evidence fit it, and their evidence might actually show the opposite. And we don't do that. We follow the evidence. Whatever the evidence shows, that's what we, and I've had to have that uncomfortable conversation with the family members before. Your house is not haunted, and I've actually had to have the uncomfortable conversation with the homeowner before. It's not haunted, but you're crazy. I didn't put it that rudely, but you know what I'm saying? Sometimes, a lot of times, residential ends up being mental health. Just saying.
Okay, so you mentioned the EMF meters. What one piece of equipment do you rely on the most? What's your favorite tool? Okay,
so it's kind of funny because I am not an ITC person. I don't like the Ovilus. I do not like the Portal script. I'm not an ITC person, but I have a Paratek VM5. It's made over in England. It's ITC. I've had that thing for 3 years. I bought it secondhand, and I bought it secondhand for Steve Gonzalez, actually, and that thing for 3 years has got me good results. But let me do a disclaimer there. I also never use just one piece of equipment. I like to have two pieces of equipment working together. So every time I'm using the Paratek, I'm also using the Ghost Gear, the Yes No box. The Apple box. That's what it's called. I'm also using the Apple box. That way, if I have multiple pieces of equipment going along the same line, then maybe I have something.
So what one piece of equipment do you think that investigators over-rely on? What do you think that is?
I got two for you, okay?
Yeah.
K2 and SLS.
Okay.
Do you want me to explain?
Please,
I can explain.
Please do. No, go for it.
Okay, so K2 is an okay piece of equipment if it's used right, and you understand what it gives you. It's not, if a K2 meter goes off, it's not instantly a spirit, so you have to understand that. The other thing, the only reason everybody's got to take a K2. I even got a K2. Honestly, I have a K2 because, when you're on Facebook and then the teams have that thing, if you go on a paranormal investigation, you have to bring a piece of equipment with the first letter of your name. I get to take a K2 meter, I can't. So, but the reason why everybody's got a K2 meter is because of Grant Wilson. No disrespect to Grant, I love Grant. He's one of my top five. You know what I'm saying? But what we have to understand is Grant used the K2 meter because he already had one. He's a plumber, so he already had a K2 meter. So that's why he has it. So I'm not saying it doesn't show anything. It doesn't show as much as people think it does. And then with the SLS, the first thing with the SLS, most people use it wrong. You always see, especially on TV, people walking around with SLS. And SLS is designed to be stationary. Mm-hmm. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the version 1 SLS, particularly, too many false positives. I've seen it pick up a banister as a human shape. a pile of clothes as a human shape. So that's the problem with SLS.
Okay.
But I will also say that I truly believe that any piece of equipment can be useful if you use it right. If you're trained in the force positives and the weaknesses, the strengths, it can be useful. Even phone apps, except for there's one thing a phone app will never be able to do. A phone app cannot be an EF reader. It just can't. So I don't personally use phone apps. So but I don't want people jumping on me like, "Oh, you use phone apps now." What I'm saying is, I'm not a paranormal guy, and I can't tell you what's right or wrong. And realistically, from a scientific philosophy standpoint, if you think about it, your phones nowadays are basically mini computers.
Right.
So if they're programmed correctly, which is a big F, but if they're programmed correctly, why couldn't they be useful?
No, absolutely. Absolutely. I agree 100% with you. So let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk more with Ken. Stay with us.
From across the globe, where the unexplained refuses to stay buried, comes a network that doesn't just talk about the paranormal. It broadcasts it. Welcome to Paranormal UK Radio, streaming worldwide at paranormalukradio.com, bringing you an international lineup of voices from the edge of reality, featuring hit shows like the Unholy Podcast, hosted by author and paranormal investigator Doug Owen, alongside Seventh Sanctum with Carrie Ann and Natalie, The Paranormal Peep Show, Unknown Classic Origins Radio, Mac Maloney's Military, X-Files Fridays, Scary Eerie with Mark Manning, The High Strangeness Factor with Steve Ward, Andy Mercer, and Susie Bastille, 6 Degrees of John Keel, and Transdimensional Realities with Melissa Lee. This isn't just radio. It's a deep look at the paranormal. Tune in now at paranormalukradio.com and step into the unknown, because the truth is never silent.
This episode of the Unholy Podcast and the Unholy Broadcast is proudly sponsored by Loreo Watches. In the shadows, time moves differently. Moments stretch. Silence lingers, and sometimes what waits in the darkness is watching. Through every investigation, every whispered encounter, and every unexplained moment, one thing remains constant: time. Loreo Watches blends timeless craftsmanship with bold sophistication, designed for those who understand that every second matters, especially when the unknown draws near. Elegant, precise, unmistakable. Whether you walk in daylight or chase mysteries after dark, wear the timepiece that commands attention. Loreo Watches, because even in the darkness, time never stops. Proud sponsor of the Unholy Podcast and the Unholy Broadcast.
The experiences discussed on the Unholy Podcast are not fiction. They are drawn from lived events. Doug's first-hand account of a sustained haunting, as documented in the book, The Unholy Silence. The book details the investigation, the psychological toll, and the impact on his family, offering a deeper look at what happens when paranormal events move beyond theory and into daily life. The Unholy Silence is available worldwide through Amazon in paperback, hardback, and ebook formats. For those who want the full account, the story begins there. First, There was the unholy silence, the terrifying, true memoir. Next, we brought you deeper into the mysteries of the paranormal with the Unholy Podcast. Now comes the Unholy Broadcast, a live radio show discussing the paranormal and listeners' true accounts of experiences with things that are unexplained. Unexplainеdradio.com is where you'll find the broadcast. Visit author DougOwen.com or unexplainеdradio.com for more. Tune in, listen, watch the podcast, read the book, and beware the unholy.
So, tell me, Kent, what is the most compelling piece of evidence that you have ever gathered?
So that's funny you mentioned that, because I just found what I thought was a lost piece of evidence Monday.
Okay.
And it's actually video footage of an apparition. But usually when we see an apparition, it's like 2 seconds and it's gone. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
This is an apparition. This is a minute and 2 seconds of an apparition pacing in front of the staircase. Wow. And you can actually even see movement, like shoulders moving. And of course, I tried to debunk it, couldn't debunk it. I have friends of mine that was going to the same location the next weekend, so I had them try to debunk it. They couldn't debunk it. It took place at Octagon Hall in Franklin, Kentucky. And we was down in the basement. We were actually in the family library just doing a basic EVP session, and something told me to look up. Whatever you want to call it, interest in my guess, just whatever. But something told me to look up, and when I looked up, I saw this apparition. So I just started videoing it, and I keep videoing it until, like I said, a minute and 2 seconds, and then it finally just disappears. So as soon as it's done, I get up and I start trying to debunk immediately. My first thought is, well, that's just like car headlights, you know what I'm saying? But this is 2 o'clock in the morning in the middle of nowhere. There's no car headlights, first of all. Second of all, car headlights ain't going to act like that. And so then I started trying to do it. And I hadn't shared anything with any of the team members that was with me. We had another team with us at the same time. That night too, we were doing a collaboration, and I didn't say anything to any of them. I just got up and started trying to debunk it, turning on, and then finally everybody's like, "What are you doing?" They probably thought I was nuts, which may be true. I may be nuts, but eventually I was like, I showed them the video, and then I was like, "I'm trying to debunk this," and so that's definitely one of the best pieces of evidence I got. The other one is actually now a tattoo on me. It was originally a ghost bite. Have you ever heard of a ghost biting?
No, but for those listening that don't know, please go into detail. What is that? What is a ghost bite? There's a place in Kentucky. They finally shut it down because of how violently haunted it is, but it's called the Anderson Hotel. Okay, so when it was open, their claim was the ghost bite. Well, I wanted to call bullshit on that, because at that point I had been doing this 25 years, and I had been pushed, I had been scratched, I had things thrown at me, but I had never been bit. I mean, that takes a lot of energy. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So we get to the Anderson Hotel, and the first thing I always tell people about the hotel is, first of all, it's called the Anderson Hotel, but we're not talking about like the Ramada or the Hilton. We're not even talking about like the Motel 6. It's a transit hotel. You know what I'm saying? Mm. It's the kind where, so it's a transit hotel. So that's the first thing that people. The second thing, in my experienced opinion, the people who own the house want it to be violently haunted. Okay, I say that for several reasons. The first reason is when me and my team went, and it just opened back up, and it had already been closed down for 3 years prior because of how violently haunted it is, and they decided to try to reopen it. So we get there, and there's 5 verified deaths there, whether it's from suicide, murder, whatever. And when I verify death,
I used the coroner's report, I used the police report, and I used the newspaper. You know what I'm saying? I verified.
Yeah.
So of these 5 verified deaths that they have, they still have 3 bloodstained mattresses there.
Wow.
They still have a bloodstained bathtub. And then the 5th one I'll get to later. It doesn't have anything to do with the bite, but it's a good story. It's the best EVP I've ever captured. The 5th one, the guy lived there, and he was truly he truly falls into the dickhead when he was alive, so he's a dickhead when he's dead category.
Right.
He was an alcoholic, and he drank himself to the point that he hung himself in the closet. Well, they still have all of his alcohol bottles there, and they encourage you to bring him a bottle of alcohol. He also ran prostitutes in and out, but we'll get to that story later. Wow. So we get there, and there's only 5 of us because this was a 5-hour trip. So we get there, and before we even divide up, because we usually divide up, with my team, we do teams of 2 or 3, to get better activity, and then we, investigate for an hour, take a break, switch, that kind of stuff. But we had just started, so we hadn't broke up yet, and we decided to start in the bathroom with a bloodstained bathtub. So the backstory on the bloodstained bathtub is there was a 30-some-odd-year-old mother, say, late 30s, early 40s. She checked into the hotel basically for the purpose of committing suicide. Her husband and her son had just died in a mining accident, so that was her reaction. And so her bloodstain's still there. So I'm doing an EVP session, and I'm a very respectful investigator. I talk to the spirits just like I'm talking to you. Right. So this time we're running camcorders. Digital recorders. I don't think anybody uses a camcorder anymore. Digital recorder, voice recorder, all this stuff. So we're all together. So I ask if I can get in the bathtub, and the response is yes and no. I'm like, I can't do both. So eventually I get in the bathtub, and this is an old-fashioned bathtub, the kind with the crawl feet, that kind. Mm-hmm. And so I'm in the bathtub, and I'm doing an EVP session. Well, eventually, like 10 minutes into the EVP session, I get out for the 3rd time. And yes, I wait 3 times, because, what people don't realize with spirits, a lot of times when the spirit tells you to get out the first time, they're just trying to scare you. If you're still respectful and let them know that you're just trying to get their story, they'll still talk to you. But my rule is, once you give me 3, I'm going to move on to the next room. Yeah. So when I get the third get out, I go to get out of the bathtub because I'm like, we'll move on to the next room. So as I'm getting out of the bathtub, I feel like, it don't feel like a bite. It feels like a really deep Indian burn on my calf. Mm-hmm. And then when we get to a makeshift base, it looked like a double bite. And like I said, I had my tattoo guy tattoo exactly over it, so I have it permanently on my leg at all times. And that experience is echoed by Daryl Munson, from Ghost Hunters. Okay. He had the same thing happen to him, and Chris Jericho. Okay. Don't ask me why Chris Jericho went. I don't know. Okay. So on further to the story. So then we divide up. The girls go together, and then me and Dennis go together. And the first thing I do is I go to the closet where the guy committed suicide. And as soon as I hit the closet, my energy is completely drained from me, and I hit the floor. They have to pull me out of the closet. And that doesn't stop me, though, because it's me. Now, if it happens to my team, it bothers me. But if it happens to me, I don't care. And so as me and Dennis are upstairs, the girls go down to what's probably the most known room of the Anderson Hotel. This 18-year-old girl traveled all the way from Michigan to this little town in Kentucky. Nobody knows why. Nobody really knows her backstory. We tried to find it. We couldn't find it. But what we do know is, for some reason, she took crayons. Don't know why crayons, but she took crayons and she would draw like landscapes, like basic landscapes, and then write a Bible verse underneath. And these are still hanging all over the room. But then she ends up committing suicide. it bleeds out on the mattress, and the mattress is still there.
That is absolutely amazing. That's incredible. It still exists. So let me ask you this question. So, do you think paranormal entertainment has helped or has hurt?
I got my own word for it. You want to know what my word for it is?
Please share. Yes.
Para-pop culture.
Okay. All right.
And I will say this, there's good and bad. I will say that we got this one duo, and I'm not going to mention names, but I will say that I call them the Spice Girls of the paranormal field.
Okay. All right.
And because, they're running around screaming everything's a demon, faking stuff, buying a school that's not even that active, and triple or the pricing, that hurts the field. And then we got this other team that runs around with them. My third book is actually conquering all this. My third book's title is actually, it takes more than running around with skinny jeans and yelling demons to be a paranormal investigator.
Okay, great title.
Yeah, titles are my thing in my book. My first book, the one that's out right now, is Don't Buy Generic Batteries, and it's probably not a demon.
Clever.
And then the other thing that's good about my books is who I get to write my foreword. My foreword in the book that's out right now is actually written by Aaron G. Thompson. Okay. And but anyway, so back to the question. So this other group. So I was a featured guest at Smoky Mountain, Ontario last year. Okay. So for the people who don't know what Smoky Mountain, Ontario is, think Scarefest, but bigger. So it's actually more horror than it is paranormal, but they throw the paranormal field a bone. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So Outlaw Paranormal was there. I was there. Josh Morris was there. SOS Paranormal was there, and Project Fair was there.
Nice.
And they were charging $60 for a picture. Not even an autograph picture, a picture. A 5x8 picture. So I have a problem with that. But me being me, you know what I did? I walk up to him. I walk up to Tanner, and I was like, I called him out on it right there in front of everybody. You know why? Because that's me. His response was cool, though. His response was, that's fair. And he treated me nice. He treated me with professional courtesy, for lack of a better term. But yeah, so I mean, those are the kind of things that hurt the field, the faking, the yelling, everything's a demon. I'm not going to, they're all demons, but you're talking about less than 1% of our activity, so that's what hurts the field. But on the positive side, it has opened up the discussion more. Like 6, 8, 10-year-old me had nobody I could talk to about it. If I tried to talk to people about paranormal back then, I was judged. Nowadays, I still live in the same area. Nowadays, I'm at Walmart. I'm talking about my paranormal, and all of a sudden, everybody has activity at their grandmother's house. Everybody has, everybody's like, oh, and then everybody's like, oh, you mean like ghost hunters? I'm like, not quite, but okay. I was like, you get the point. So yeah, so that's the positive, and a good friend of mine pointed out to me, because it used to bother me a little bit that, people like the Spice Girls of the paranormal field, they got millions and millions of followers, and I'm struggling here, still working a 9-to-5 job, It used to bother me because I'm like, I'm legit. They're not. And Sarah explained to me, she's like, kid, I understand that, but she's like, you have to understand the people that tune into Sam and Kobe or whoever, they tune in to be entertained. They don't tune in to see what it's really like. Right. So two different groups. Right. So yeah, there is a positive and negative. But I think right now, especially, I think right now we have more paranormal entertainers than we got paranormal investigators, and that's the problem.
I would agree with that. So let's talk about podcasting. Now, you host Paranormal Addicts podcast. What inspired you to launch that?
So a little story about me. I don't talk about very much anymore, but I'm actually a brain surgery survivor.
Okay.
I have Chiari malformation. It's an incurable condition. brain surgery is actually just a treatment for it. Where I had brain surgery, it's been 5 years ago now. And so when I had the brain surgery, for a few years, my life paused. All the work I put into the paranormal field, all the work I put into everything, paused. So for 3 years, I finally decided to get back into it. And honestly, when I got back into it, I was like, nobody's going to remember me. Nobody's going to care that, I'm back. But I decided, I was encouraged to, try the podcast thing, because, that was 4 years ago now. So that was back 3 years ago. That was back when everybody did a podcast, So I started a podcast. I did one episode, and then that's when the Get Haunted podcast program was going. So Rob and Sarah actually reached out to me, and they're like, I think you'll fit in here. And that helped me find my voice back. No. And then, so from there, I've grown to where we are now. And in the last 3 episodes, I've been completely by myself, because the Get Haunted podcast program dissolved. It's no longer there. And I outgrew it probably last year, but I stayed out of loyalty. But looking at my list of guests I got coming up now, maybe I was being held back, and so I'm excited about the rest of year 3, and I'm really excited about season 4. I've already got people booked all the way until March.
Wow, that is impressive. That is incredible. Good for you.
That's with me taking the symbol off, of course. Here's something that just happened last night that I'm excited about. You want to know who my opening guest is for season 4?
Sure.
Bear Murphy.
Oh, nice. Okay. All right. Very nice.
You know how it happened?
No, tell me.
I've been inviting him for years, and I guess I was just, up until this year, I was too small for everybody. You see my guest list, you know what I'm talking about. And this year, everybody's just kind of fell in place. But I actually forgot that I had sent Bill a message. Right? Apparently, him and his wife had been on vacation. He hit me up last night, and he's like, yeah, I think I want to do that. He's like, our theories are similar. So he has a similar theory to my resonant energy theory. So that's why he decided he wanted to do it. So that was cool.
Nice. So let's talk about your first book. What is the name of your first book? Tell everybody about it.
Don't buy generic batteries, and it's probably not a demon.
Okay. You mentioned that one before. Yeah. All right.
And the subtitle is Memoirs of a Paranormal Investigator.
Okay. Nice. And where can they find your book? Where can everybody find your book?
Amazon. This one was self-published. I'm actually working with a publisher for the next... I planned on only writing 3 books, but that doesn't work. I can actually announce my side project. I just decided I was going to do last night. It's actually, I'm excited about it though. It's actually for a young adult reader, a teen reader book. I'm going to do a kind of like a paranormal version of the Hardy Boys.
Okay, nice.
They're going to be called the Boo Brothers.
Okay. Very nice. Very nice.
But the book I'm working on right now, the one I'm actually, working on right this second, is actually a kind of a passion project. It puts to work my theology degree, and it's actually the title is actually Hold On, You're a Paranormal Investigator and a Christian. How does that work? And
okay.
So that title was actually inspired by Heather Donahue. You know who Heather Donahue is from the Blue Ridge Project?
Right.
Yeah, so I'll tell you the story about the title, and then I'll go a little bit more into the book. So again, this was at Smoky Mountain Terror, and we was having, it was a lunch break. So at that time, the public wasn't allowed on the floor, so it was just just the guests, and so I was standing there, and there was only 2 people I cared about talking to, Smoky Mountain Terrier last year, and one was Kane Holder, and I got to talk to him too. And the other one was Heather. So I was talking to Heather. We had been talking for like 15, 20 minutes. I mean, it passed the friendly conversation and was into, actual friends. You know what I'm saying? We actually laughed at one point. Coke came out of her nose. I mean, it was cool. And so the doors opened back up, and I noticed that I noticed that her line was getting back up, so I excused myself to go back over to my table.
Right.
Well, as I went back over to my table, she noticed I had a tattoo. I have 13 tattoos, but she noticed my born again tattoo on my forearm. And I do it cool. I got the square root with the born inside of it. And so anyway, she noticed that. She's like, "Hold on, kid." And that was her exact question. So that got me thinking. And growing up in the Bible Belt, I got that asked a lot in different ways. We already went over the fact that I was told when I was 10 years old that I told them when I was going to hell. And I don't care what people believe. Just don't tell me how to believe myself either. So that was that stuck with me. That stuck with me. And I was actually going to make that the third book, but something told me it needed to be the second book. So I got Wade Kirby is writing the preface for me and stuff. And there's some theology in it, but a lot of it's just about just because I actually got in a discussion at the library with a friend of mine who's a pastor. Well, he's one of my kids' friends' dad, so I don't know if that counts as a friend of mine, acquaintance of mine, whatever you want to call it. Sure. But he's there, and he's like blah 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 blah. I'm like, hold on. I was like, before we continue this argument, do you want me to make you cry? I'm like, because if we continue this argument, I'm going to make you cry. I'm like, I have 2 degrees in theology. How many do you have? I'm like, I know mine. I was like, I learned to protect myself. I'm like, so he kept going, because some people, people always like to use Ephesians, and where it says, don't talk to the living dead because you don't know if they're good or evil. Mm-hmm. But that's fine and good, but what people have to understand, that's the New King James Version, or as I like to call it, the New King Jimmy Version. And so that's not an exact translation of the Greek and Hebrew. So if you take the actual translation from the Greek and Hebrew, it says it different, and some words are left out. And so the actual translation, word for word, says, "Do not talk to the living dead unless you are blessed or trained, for then only will you know if it's good or evil."
Right.
So that's a little bit different. And then you have these people that these people who try to say, "Oh, the Bible doesn't say anything about demons. The Bible doesn't say anything about Jesus. I mean, the Bible doesn't say anything about ghosts." I'm like, hold on. I'm like, let's do the demon thing first. I'm like, so if you remember, Jesus comes onto this island and he runs into a man. The man is wild, and when Jesus asks him his name, the man responds with, "My name is Legion, because I am many." Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And Jesus sends the demons out into the livestock, and then they go crazy. So that's that's what I'm saying. And then I'm going to leave this. This is the last thing I'm going to say, and then we can move on to the next question.
Sure.
So then when people try to say that the Bible doesn't say anything about ghosts, I'm like, okay. I was like, okay. I'm like, are you sure? Are you sure? And because most people are like, yeah, I'm sure. I'm like, okay, let's talk about Jesus. And I was like, we all know Jesus, right? I'm like, yeah, Jesus, whatever. I was like, so we all know Jesus. I'm like, there's 2 instances, not 1, but 2 instances in the Bible where Jesus himself says to his disciples, "Fear not, for I am not a ghost."
Right.
I was like, the first one is when he's walking on water. I was like, the demons, he's walking on water, the disciples get scared. I'm like, so the second one is actually probably more important. The second one is when he's resurrected And we appears to the disciples. You know what I'm saying? And Jesus could have said anything. He could have said, I'm not a demon. He could have said, I'm not a goat. He could have said, I'm not Bigfoot.
Right.
I'm not Sasquatch. I'm not Chupacabra. You know what I'm saying? But he specifically said ghost. And that's, that's what I tell people. I'm not telling you have to be a Christian. I don't care. But I'm telling you not to tell me that I can't be a Christian and an investigator.
Right. That's amazing. So now, before I let you go here, this is my favorite part of the show. It's called Unholy Fire. And what it is a rapid fire. So one word answers, right? Just whatever is off the top of your head. No explanation, just the first word that comes to your mind, okay? Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Demon.
Yes.
Ghost.
Energy.
Shadow figure.
Possible demon.
EVP.
Evidence.
Possession.
Possible.
Exorcism.
Yeah.
Okay. Ouija board.
Tool.
Haunted doll.
Resident energy theory.
Bigfoot.
Yes, but not alien.
Okay. Next one is alien.
Yes, because we're arrogant if we think we're the only life form.
Attachment.
If invited.
Okay. Poltergeist.
Complicated.
And hell.
What?
Hell.
How's it complicated? Because
No, I'm sorry.
there's so many.
No. The word is hell. Hell. Sorry.
Oh, how? It could be a warning.
Okay. All right. So you survived Unholy Fire. So now, Kent, for listeners who want to find you, they can find you on Amazon. And you're absolutely Googleable. I know you've got a massive social media presence out there. So where can they learn more about the resonance energy theory?
Right now, the best place is to go to Facebook and find Kent Wilson. I'm not hard to find. I mean, and right now that's the best way because I got the videos and stuff up there. You can find out on there. Whenever I'm doing a podcast and or when I'm speaking, I'm actually going to be speaking at on Halloween at the Frights of Nights at Pine Lawn Manor in Indiana, and that's the whole talk is going to be on the resonant energy theory, and then I'm going to be at Rock Island, that Rock Island Expo, the first weekend of October, and then I have my own Paracon. I don't like that term. I call it a Paranormal Expo. Okay. I have my own Paranormal Expo on September 26th, the last Saturday, National Ghost Hunting Day, here in Mayfield, Kentucky. I'm not speaking because I don't speak at my own events, but I am doing a meet and greet and book signing. I'm even speaking to Aaron G. Thompson and Outlaw Paranormal and the Renner Bros and all them,
Nice, terrific. Kent, this has been a fantastic conversation. I really appreciate your time and your perspective. So thank you so much for joining me tonight on the Unholy Podcast.
Thanks for having me, and I'll see you on the Paranormal Addicts here in a couple weeks.
Absolutely. Now, before we end the show tonight, I want to tell you about a couple of things coming up here. So first of all, I'm going to be a featured guest author at the Boise, Idaho Darkness Con. So if you're in the neighborhood, come out and see me. Grab a copy of my book, The Unholy Silence. I'll be happy to sign it for you. Also, I'm going to be appearing on the Beyond Normal podcast. This is going to be on Paraflix. It's a brand new show. You guys should subscribe to Paraflix if you haven't. Check out the show. It's going to be amazing. I'll be also available on various other podcasts and interviews. I'll be conducting interviews throughout the summertime here. Also, I want to tell you, don't miss the Unholy Broadcast. This is Friday nights, my live radio show. You guys can call in, tell me about your paranormal experiences, your stories of the unexplained. So you can find all of this information and more at authordougowen.com. Once again, thank you for joining us in the shadows of all places. So if tonight's conversation sparked questions, assumptions, or sent you deeper into the unknown, then we've done exactly what we've come here to do. So, as I always say, until next time, dear listeners, dear viewers, stay safe, be aware, and beware, because sometimes the silence is the most terrifying thing.
You've just heard another chilling chapter of the Unholy Podcast, hosted by Doug Owen, author, investigator, and witness to the things most fear to name. For more real stories, cursed objects, and exclusive content, step deeper into the dark at authordougowen.com. Subscribe, share, and remember, some silences aren't empty, they're waiting.